we want businesses to open up their business to all of their possible audience. Right? You're spending money on marketing, conversion rate optimization, and SEO and paid marketing. Now let's make sure that nobody's just jumping off of your site very quickly simply because they were unable to really utilize and navigate through your website.
Fully managed by Penji.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed by Penji podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you in your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's partnership coordinator, and here with me now is a very special guest, Landon Shefts from AccessiBe. Landon is very passionate about website accessibility and how helpful his service is and can be for a large chunk of the population that is unfortunately often put to the wayside. I am so excited to have you on today to talk more about your passions about your work.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's get started. Thank you so much for coming on. So my first question for you is, what got you interested in website accessibility specifically?
Yeah, so website accessibility is something that a lot of people just are simply unaware about. If they don't have a disability, they don't really consider how blind users may use the internet, things of that nature. But I was actually working at Wix, the do-it-yourself website builder, for about 3 years on their partner program. And a lot of these agencies who are building on behalf of their clients are coming to us and saying, hey, this was the very early days of, let's say, the spike of lawsuits for web accessibility, and they were saying, what are your options that are available? And back then it was pretty minimum. It was adding image descriptions. It was really just things of that nature. And once I started hearing about it enough, I thought, okay, this is obviously going to be something that's important, just as responsiveness in websites was important. When I first started at Wix, at the tail end of me being there, web accessibility was sort of all I was always getting questions about. So when I found a company like AccessiBe and they were explaining, look, it's not really that anybody has any ill intent against people with disabilities. It's simply the fact that they don't know what options are out there. They're unfamiliar with it. Or back when web accessibility first became a real option, it was simply too expensive or just too time consuming, too much for them to handle. I sort of fell in love with the idea of, hey, there are now options out there that can go ahead and make a business owner's life a bit easier while helping out people with disabilities.
That's incredible. Could you tell us more about your service and how it helps?
Yeah, absolutely. So AccessiBe is the company as a whole. We offer a suite of solutions. On our services side, it's, we partner with foundations that have people with disabilities who will utilize user testing and go through certain scenarios on somebody's website. Let's say it's an e-commerce site, try to purchase something using their assistive technologies. If they're blind, that means a screen reader that's downloaded into their operating system and reading out the content of this site so that they could give feedback on, hey, here's where your website's failing, for example, or here's where I personally, as a person with a disability, found a roadblock. That goes into file remediation, media transcription, things of that nature. That's more of an as-needed service, right? If you don't have files or media, obviously you wouldn't need those services. Then we do offer some developer tools, some auditing tools that will go into more so describing the basics of web accessibility and also providing the code changes that are necessary to make sure that a site is accessible. But our main bread and butter offering and what we've been providing since day one is called our Access widget. And what that is an AI-based tool that has a front end component to it. So that's something that you could actually open up. And if you have epilepsy, for example, you're prone to photosensitive seizures, you could put on a seizure safe profile. It's going to make a number of different adjustments. It's going to make sure that the site, anything that's flickering, anything that's too maybe saturated or colorful, it's going to be dulled down a bit. pause anything that's moving. And now, as somebody with epilepsy, or if somebody visiting the site does have epilepsy, they know that they have a much safer browsing experience. As well as there's like 50 different adjustments. I won't describe all of them, but another popular one is our low vision mode, which is for, sometimes people who just don't have their glasses that day, have a number of different visual impairments, or even just folks who are getting older and, don't necessarily, and are still needing to use these websites. So it's going to, size up the content of the website itself, put white backgrounds behind black text, saturate things a bit more, overall just making it a bit easier to view. So that's all happening on the front end. There's individual adjustments as well. But on the back end, what we're providing that's where the AI comes into play. And that's where a majority of actual litigation and lawsuits and really the troubling issues with a non-accessible site come into play. We're making sure that a website is navigable using just your keyboard or other assistive technologies that people utilize. So by pressing tab, you should be able to go through every part of a website, including a drop-down menu, including a pop-up, including forms, checkout processes, all of these different things. But this is a very tedious process. With AI, we are able to pick up using certain context clues. Hey, this is a field we know to stay in here. This is a pop-up. We know to lift the focus of our keyboard navigation into that pop-up and stay there until the user actually decides they want to leave the pop-up. In addition to that, we're also providing, making sure that people know that certain items are clickable so that they're buttons, for example, or adding alt text. We're not going to replace any alt text that people have added for specificity or SEO purposes, but we are going to add any alt tags that may be missing so that a user does have as much context as possible. A blind user has as much context as possible while visiting a website. So I know that's a lot. I apologize, but that's just a broad overview of some of the things that the Access widget is able to take care of to help you save a ton of time, a ton of money, and then most importantly, when you're changing your website, keep you up to date with the current compliance standards at all times.
That's all great. You don't have to apologize for that. And we're extensive, at least it was detailed so that people will understand it. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And then I'm curious. So I guess people would also want to know what is the process of installing your widget? That is the most popular thing that you do. And then also, I know a lot of people are wary about installing anything because of viruses, malware, different things like that. How do you reassure people that installing your widget isn't going to mess with anything or create a harder time for any of their departments that work on their website?
Yeah, so, of course, it depends on what architecture they're using, if they're using a certain CMS, whatever the case may be. Realistically, what it is about a line and a half of JavaScript code. It can be customized to look and feel a certain way to go with the branding of your website. It's very lightweight. I don't know the exact specifications off the top of my head, but, that's something that we're working with agencies a lot of the time, right? That's something that they pride themselves on is we're not going to make your website any heavier. We're not going to make any load time. We're not going to make any longer of a load time because that could affect SEO and things of that nature. And we want to do the inverse of that, actually. We want to make sure that you're improving your SEO. So we're always testing to make it as light as possible. The installation is really just copy and paste. If you are using certain CMS platforms, it's sometimes inside of a sort of code injection aspect of that CMS platform. Other times, if it's a bit more headless, you're able to just install it right before the footer, and it's no problem whatsoever. In terms of security, we have a CISO here. He is one of the best. We also have some cybersecurity experts who are always testing this. We are SOC 2 certified by Deloitte, so something that we're very proud of, which just goes to show. And, we also just we're working with state governments as well. The Indiana state website, for example, Mississippi state website. We're working with large national banks. We're working with large hospitals. These are people who we had to go through all of their compliance sort of hoops and their security hoops to make sure that we're not taking any data, we're not causing any privacy concerns, we're not causing any safety concerns that will affect any of their clients, since they're more regulated than, let's say a mom and pop shop. So yes, to answer your question briefly, you're going to be all set from a security side. If you ever need documentation, we could provide that. And of course, we have an in-depth data policy and privacy policy.
That's great. I think that'll definitely suit a lot of people's worries. I think that's something that concerns people the most about installing anything on their computer, or especially when, someone owns a business and they really don't want to mess with what they've created.
Yeah.
That's really nice to know.
Yeah, I understand completely. It's about as lightweight as can be. It's almost as if it's not even there. We wanted to just sit in the background, do the work, have you not worry about these issues any longer.
That's great. Thank you. Do you know what your accessibility widget is used for the most?
It's mainly used for the back-end capabilities. So for keyboard navigation, for blind user mode. Those two are linked together, of course, because blind users, for the most part, are also using the tab key to navigate through a site, as well as, enter and escape, things of that nature. So, those two tools are often linked together the most and used. From the front end, I would say our low vision mode tends to be very popular. That is, again, the one that's making the content a bit larger, saturating the colors a bit more, changing backgrounds to make it a bit easier if there's, maybe not the best contrast on a website, which is probably the most popular issue or most seen issue that people have when making their site accessible. So yeah, I would say that the back-end capabilities, and then on the front end, the low vision mode, I would say might be number one. Although I do get a lot of feedback that people or their children love our ADHD friendly mode.
I would love that.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it provides a reading mask. It will pause anything that's flickering, and people just focus within that reading mask that highlights about 2 to 3 lines of whatever you may be reading at the time. And a lot of times I hear parents going, yeah, my kid uses that, and it really is something that has helped them a ton.
That's amazing. I can't even see a website. Like, I couldn't have a website open right now in the corner of my screen, and I wouldn't be able to help getting distracted if it had anything on it. Like, that sounds so incredible. And my next question is, if someone was unable to use your widget for their website, what would you recommend to them with keeping accessibility in mind when designing their website?
Good question. If you were ever unable to utilize our solution, first we would ask why, because to be able to work on every site, no matter the architecture, no matter the sort of scope or complexity of it, even if it does mean, and AccessiBe, we're the gold standard when it comes to web accessibility, especially from an automated standpoint. So we do have the support teams necessary to make sure that it's going to work throughout your testing phase, if that's what you need at first, to make sure that's going to work with your complex website. And we have we've 20 plus support people just in the US alone that are readily available to help. Sales engineers, research and development, anything that you may need in order to make sure that it will work for you. That being said, for whatever case, if somebody was unable to utilize us, we would recommend that, they are at least using something like a scanning tool to report back to them any issues that are found regarding web accessibility. So that could be something like Access Flow, which is, more of a developer's tool. It does take some insight on the code itself. You do have to make the code changes yourself, but it is going to break it down for you very simply with an explanation of why this matters for accessibility. Here's the old code that's inaccessible. Here's the new code that you can use to replace that with. And, can scan, you could choose daily, weekly, monthly, for example, and choose the amount of pages to be scanned, all of these different things. Then, of course, there's some best practices, not even involving AccessiBe, that are always recommended. So using contrast checkers, there's plenty of free ones on the web from the internet that can tell you, hey, these colors do go well together and are enough of a contrast, so that's not going to cause issues for people with vision issues or vision problems. Making sure that your alt tags or your image descriptions are filled out, and they're filled out in a way that's accurate, in a way that is not too long as well, is very important, because that's something that a blind user using their screen reader is unable to hear unless it's actually filled out by an end user, by something like the Access widget. So I'd say those two practices are really great, but always engage the community of people with disabilities and ask, hey, where are you finding issues on our website? We want to address them, because that is something that is important. And any brand in 2024 is looking to be socially aware. They're looking to be socially responsible. Again, we don't think that people make their sites inaccessible with any ill intent. It's purely just the fact that they're unaware of how to reach that level. And, firsthand experience is the best kind of experience that you could hear back from.
It's really good that you work with your audience as well, and not just, I know that clearly you're trying to fix a problem that's occurring everywhere, but it's really nice that you also take criticism on your own website and others. I think that is really forward moving for if you say that you stand for accessibility and helping a group of people, then it's nice to know that you're continuously evolving.
Yeah, I've seen our solution. I've been with the company almost 3 years now. When we opened our New York office, I've seen our solution become significantly better, for lack of a better word. And that's all due to user testing. So we will have focus groups. We have other experts in assistive technologies come in and provide us feedback on, maybe the pop-ups, for example, or very complicated menus. What is the most ideal way you would want to go through this menu, right? And hearing back from that and, making adjustments to our tools doing so. We understand that a lot of business owners want to just avoid the lawsuit part of it and the litigation that follows. To touch on those numbers a little bit, there's typically, the numbers we saw for last year is about 4,500 lawsuits, which doesn't sound like a ton, but the lawsuits is only as if it actually ends up going to court. What most people decide to do is settle outside of court. We're talking about on a smaller website, maybe $8,000. On a larger website, $25,000, upward of $100,000. And, it's not like once you decide to settle, you just get to wash your hands clean from it and walk away. You still need to make your site accessible. So what we're having a lot of people do, and what a lot of the agencies and their clients are reaching out to us for at this point, is let's get ahead of that. Let's make sure that we can avoid that to begin with. And let's make sure that our site is accessible. Nobody could come to us with a complaint. Although we do understand in the States, people like to sue each other. It's a fun little game we have. We know all about it. So whether it's, a true discrimination case or more of a, there's some lawyers out there that maybe have found the loophole. What we do want to do is provide you with a number of different resources, documentation that's going to prove that your site is in fact accessible, that these claims are false, and actually check on those claims as well to make sure that they are in fact false. And that includes getting our chief legal team involved, getting our R&D team involved, and sending screenshots of the code where it is accessible, sending video breakdowns. And, we have a very great success rate with this. If anybody ever wants case studies, we have those available to them as well, specifically on the e-commerce side of things. But outside of just making sure that a website is accessible and, for legal purposes, is we want businesses to open up their business to all of their possible audience, right? You're spending money on marketing, you're spending money on conversion rate optimization and SEO and paid marketing, whatever the case may be. Now let's make sure that nobody's just jumping off of your site very quickly, which could have a negative effect on your SEO simply because they were unable to really utilize and navigate through your website. So does that all make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And that's really helpful that you are able to do that for people, because not only are you confident in your service, but you're also still, as I said before, open to criticism. So if there is something wrong with your service, you want to fix that, which is really great.
Yeah, we're a technology company. Bugs happen, and we want to get them fixed as soon as possible. Product updates need to happen. It's an evolving space as well. Laws can come into play that are, right now the golden standard is called WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 at the AA level. That's the global legal accepted standard for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is where the lawsuits are coming from. For Section 508, for anybody in the public sector receiving any public money, that's the golden standard. But what happens if they change that, right? If you're doing so manually, then you need to go in and make all those changes again manually. For us, we're prepared for something like that. We could push out the new changes as necessary to all of the sites, sort of day one when those laws go into play.
So I'm sure that your goal is for all websites to be accessible, but at this point in time, which places do you think accessibility is the most important to be implemented?
So when it comes to the legal side of things, we do see, there's definitely common trends that I'll get to in just a moment. They sometimes do choose like a flavor of the month. When I started, it was like just dentists. Every dentist was getting I think they were selling, and they deal with it. So, we every day, our inbound team was just working with dentists all day, every day.
That's so interesting.
Car dealerships, we've seen it be real estate agents. I would say right now, e-commerce, anybody who has any transactions online, hospitality, healthcare is always going to be up there as well. And then professional or home services are also something that's very targeted. So anywhere where people would be trying to book services, learn more about your business, that typically tends to be where it's most important. But from a legal standpoint, right now, e-commerce tends to be sort of target number one, with healthcare being second after that.
That makes sense. That's also the rise of e-commerce recently. It just it adds up that would be so common.
Certainly.
So do you think that bigger companies, like Apple, for example, are working towards or against accessibility?
They certainly wouldn't be working against it. I use a MacBook, for example. They have a built-in screen reader. I don't know how it stacks up compared to other screen readers, quite frankly, but they have one I believe is called VoiceOver, where you can where a blind user can utilize that one. The most popular screen readers on the market are like JAWS or NVDA, which is something you could download into your operating system. I know if you go to your accessibility settings on your iPhone, for example, there's plenty of options out there. But where the discrepancy is, and this even goes into browsers, for example, Chrome, is it can only do so much with what the website has provided, right? So if, for example, we're looking at a button that's within an image, right? If it's not labeled as a button, how's Apple going to know, right? Or how is Google Chrome going to know that? So that's where AccessiBe can come in and play a role and actually write out in the description of that item on the site, the button, that it is in fact a button, that it is clickable, and now that would be read out to a blind user. So they are working towards it, but there's always going to be those limitations based on how the website's designed and developed, and that's where we bridge that gap.
That makes a lot of sense. That's really amazing, especially like it's good that they're working towards it. And it's good to know that you see that too, because I just didn't really know personally how well they've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, Command plus on your computer will always make the screen larger. That's an accessibility setting, right? My mom does it like 35 times every time she gets on a website. But, now when she goes to a website and she sees our guy, it's a little guy in the usually bottom left or bottom right hand corner of the screen with his arms out, she knows she could open that, put on low vision mode, and have a much easier time browsing through that site. So again, we're just trying to amplify that experience and make sure that it, based off of feedback, based off of user testing, is the best possible user experience, providing the most context to the end user with the disability.
That's great. So my biggest thing about AccessiBe and accessibility for websites specifically is I know that, and I've talked to a lot of nonprofits too on our other podcast. I know that a big difficulty that people have when they're doing something good is getting people to care. Unfortunately, I feel like when people aren't affected by certain things, they are really apathetic to those things happening. And apathy is I think, almost a bigger problem now than it may have been a lot of years ago. But how do you get people to care about implementing this kind of software? And how do you guys successfully market yourselves to not only your audience, but people who cater to your audience or don't cater to your audience, unfortunately?
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be websites that, blind users for the most part probably wouldn't end up visiting. Purchasing a boat, it could be a number of different things. That being said, there is still the legal aspect to it. We've seen boat dealerships get sued. We've seen them deal with litigation and demand letters. We've seen people who sell firearms to the military get sued, even though you can't visit it really as a public user. You need to, be in the military to actually take advantage of what they have to offer. So, there is the litigation aspect to it. I don't really reach a ton of, and I've spoken with, at this point, probably hundreds of thousands of website owners. We don't reach a ton of apathy. It's really just ignorance to the options that are out there, or the fact that people are they have the technology to utilize the internet in a sort of easy way if a website is developed properly. So I would say that's typically where we run into it. So it's our job, instead of making them care, just to educate them on here is how a person with a disability, and again, there's many of them covered within the website content accessibility guidelines, but here's how they utilize websites. Here's the problem they may have on this website. Here's how to fix that. Here's how our solution will fix that. And people want to help this community. It's just that they simply don't know how. Especially in 2024, when people are committed to DEI, they're committed to social responsibility. I think this is one of the easiest ways to really walk the walk, opposed to only talking the talk. And that's what people want to do, especially at an affordable rate like this.
That's really great to hear, because I really thought that maybe I'm a little pessimistic. I really just thought that there would just be like big corporations. Like, I think they would be more worried about getting sued than actually caring about the issue at hand, or that they're helping in any way.
Look, maybe some of them are saying, hey, we care, also we don't want to get sued. That major driving point is to not get hit with litigation. But these people also, they're taking risk into consideration and compliance into consideration in a number of different ways, whether it's their security, whether it's their privacy policies, cookie policies, data collection. And, they can almost view this as an insurance policy, where if we do get hit with a demand letter, we have the resources to back us up to make sure that this can be dropped. But also, every business owner wants to look good right now. This is a way that you can look good by doing the right thing. And I'm not going to say everybody cares about just that part, but I think the combination of opening up your business to a larger community, protecting yourselves, mitigating your legal risk, essentially, and doing the right thing is all combined. It makes it pretty much a no-brainer for most of these companies.
Hey, viewers at home, don't forget that this podcast is powered by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. If you're interested in using our services, head over to our website, penji.co, and sign up using the code AccessiBe15, which is located in the description. Now on to the show. That's amazing. And then I have a little fun question for you. If you so with your customer base, do you have a favorite website that you've come across? And what did you like about it? If you could think of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I guess my personal favorite, just off of an anecdote, is when I interviewed for this company, they had us do a sort of a demonstration, and I chose a random website that I shopped on a lot. It was called Bodega Store. It's spelled a little bit different, but it's, just streetwear, stuff like that. And then probably about a year and a half in, they reached out to us and ended up moving forward, unrelated to my interview. Now, and I know that they're a very high trafficked website when it comes to streetwear. So that's something I really like. But, the fact that the National MS Society, I think, is, that the fact that they have us on their website, I just think speaks wonders to how powerful our solution can be, because people with MS face a myriad of different issues, and whether it's their navigation skills, whether it's their vision, and to know that our solution can cover a variety of those issues for them and make it easier for them to use the website is just a great thing to hear.
That makes me happy. It's also really nice to be excited about or be interested in a company and then end up working with them. That's
I confidence, but I'm always happy to see it. I feel like I manifested it, really.
Well, that's all the questions that I have for you today. Do you want to say anything more to our audience? If you have anything.
Yeah, I just want to say, when it comes to automated solutions on the market, again, we are sort of the gold standard just because of the level of support handed to you, because of the fact that we will bring you to WCAG 2.1 AA level compliance. We're there for you every step of the way. We have a huge team here in the States ready to help out. And then our litigation support is something that I've never really seen offered at this level. Our track record is impeccable, and it's important to join the cause, join the mission, and make your website accessible at not too much effort on your end, not too high of a price point.
Thank you so much, and I hope that our audience is able to look into you, and hopefully a lot of them might use your service in the future. That would be great.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and being such a lovely guest. I really appreciate that. And everyone, the audience, don't forget to like and subscribe, and for more business tips and to hear stories like this. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.